of my mind. Seeing the state I was in, my wife Sylvia begged me to try new treatments. Even though the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, that didn't mean I couldn't try alternative solutions. So, even though it pained us, we spent half of the money we had put aside for Carrie's college on visiting more therapists, alternative medicine experts, and even psychiatrists. Whatever they recommended, I never said no. I tried everything. Before telling you the single method that worked, let me save you some money and tell you the treatments that did absolutely nothing for me. Hearing aids to mask the sounds inside your head, expensive and annoying to wear in your ears. Antidepressant medication and sleep drugs to calm your anxiety, the only thing they do is to zone you out and turn you into a zombie. Herbal remedies, acupuncture, meditation, breathing exercises, fine for overall calming effect if you're already healthy, but they take a lot of time and are far from a cure. Sound therapies, which may distract you for a little bit, but are nowhere close to a real relief. And Hopi ear candles, on which occasion I nearly added burns to my list of problems. The fact that nothing and no one could help me filled me with even more anguish. In the morning, I could hardly pick myself up and go to work. I was so depressed, so scared this was what my life would look like from then on that sometimes I wished I was dead. During the day, I avoided people as much as possible, including my colleagues, my friends, or my family. My migraines were so bad that I could not understand a word they were saying. But the nights were the worst. The silence made the sounds unbearable. I could only sleep for 5 minutes straight before waking up in agonizing pain. Then, the most horrific thing happened. I checked the time, it was 5 o'clock in the morning, and the ringing was driving me crazy, like a red-hot electric drill that was boring through my brain. I felt a sudden rush of boiling blood through my ears, and the swollen veins in my forehead began to quickly pound, ready to burst. Then all of a sudden, the throbbing, the pain, the ear ringing, everything stopped. Complete silence. I could only hear my wife's slow breathing sleeping next to me. Did my tinnitus just suddenly go away? Everything felt so peaceful. After so many years, these were the first seconds of sweet peace and silence. But this was just the calm before the storm. It started with just a faded ringing coming from somewhere far, far away, which quickly began to grow louder and louder with every second, like a runaway train speeding towards me. In an instant, I couldn't hear anything else except for that damn ringing. And the searing brain pain was so excruciating that I couldn't even keep my eyes open. And when I felt something snap inside my head, like a cable torn by a huge pressure, I finally lost it, began to scream and kick and shout. I dashed across the room, picked up the TV, and just threw it out the window. Little Carrie, my daughter, woke up and started crying, which made my migraine even worse. My wife was looking at me like I was insane. Both of them were shivering with fear. "Daddy, please don't hurt us," Carrie sobbed. But I couldn't listen to her. The only thing I wanted is to purge that sound right out of my brain. I violently pushed both of them out of my way like a madman, rushed to the kitchen, grabbed the lighter, and set the curtains on fire. Meanwhile, a dozen police cars and ambulances came with their loud sirens, driving me even more insane. "I will burn everything down. I will burn it all," I kind of remember screaming. It took 3 sturdy policemen and 2 doctors to put me down. Then one of the doctors gave me a shot of something. "We'll have to put him in a mental hospital immediately," he said. And then I blacked out. I spent the next few days in the local mental hospice, where after a few checkups, the doctor said I was fine and let me back home. But I knew I was not fine. How could I be? There was something clearly wrong with me, and it was all because of that damned ringing. I knew it. 3 weeks after the incident, all my friends and neighbors were avoiding me like the plague, and I still could not look into my wife's eyes. Sylvia, the love of my life, was always trembling with fear and was afraid to sit alone in the same room with me. It was gut-wrenching. But you know what? She was right. I had been a monster to them. I had terrified them, hurt them, almost burned the house down and embarrassed them in front of the whole neighborhood. Also, what if that was not a single episode? What if I did it again? What if I hurt my little Carrie even more? Or others? What if the next time they'll lock me in a mental hospital for good? That thought alone was sending cold shivers down my spine. Of course, I never wanted to scare my family like that, and I'll never forgive myself for putting them through that dreadful scene. but it was that precise moment that eventually led me to the inexpensive and natural method that I'm about to reveal to you. Back then, even though I knew I should have considered myself lucky to be alive, the truth was I wish I were dead. The truth was I was so mad, furious at the medical system who sucks you dry, then abandons you shamelessly, not caring whether you get well or not. But mostly, I was mad at myself for not taking the matter into my own hands. I mean, how could I be so blind? I was working at a world-renowned university. I had access to thousands of rare medical materials, and I knew hundreds of genius professors and brilliant specialists. There had to be a real alternative out there. Otherwise, I needed to isolate myself from my family or go to the loony bin. So the next day, I went through every corner of the 3-floor university library. The research was draining, and I can't tell you how many times I wanted to give up. Well, there must be a higher power out there because 2 weeks later, I finally found the one thing that would end up giving me and over 197,357 other people just like me their peace of mind and life back. I'd searched the internet back and forth, read piles of books, and made a ton of inquiries with college professors and ex-students who are now medical experts and acclaimed doctors. When I came across an extremely bizarre experiment that answered one of my lifelong questions, why do deaf people still get tinnitus? This barely moral experiment that I discovered was conducted in 1950. The researchers suggested if you have debilitating tinnitus, let's cut the auditory nerve and then you will be deaf. You won't hear a thing, but you won't have tinnitus. Now, you should know the auditory nerve is a bundle of fibers that captures the sounds and transmits them to the brain. A few desperate patients went along with it and got their auditory nerve surgically cut, therefore becoming completely deaf. Unfortunately, their tinnitus got even louder. That's when medical researchers realized that tinnitus isn't in the ear, and it's not related to the auditory nerve. Actually, according to Deafness Research UK, deaf people are more likely to get tinnitus. In fact, and I swear to you, shivers ran down my spine when I read this, tinnitus noises are thought to be linked to the damage that causes the deafness itself. As I kept on digging through mountains of studies and papers, my quest uncovered even stranger facts. One of them, people with extremely good ears can still hear tinnitus. Only 3 years after the auditory nerve experiment, a famous study by scientists Heller and Bergman showed that everyone, deaf or in the best physical shape, has the capacity to hear tinnitus sounds. They put 80 people in a soundproof room for 5 minutes each, and in complete silence for one of the few times in their life, nearly all of them reported hearing things. Their conclusions sent shock waves across the medical community back then, and it still does today. Tinnitus goes much deeper than your ears. On the 4th week of my quest, I finally found the key piece of the puzzle. I just couldn't believe my eyes. There it was, black on white. The 2019 breakthrough that changed everything. It said, ear ringing begins with a faulty wire connected to your brain. According to Jonathan Selin, a professor at MIT and lead author of revolutionary studies in the journal Physical Review Letters, there is a wire in the ear, a thin nerve spiraling from your inner ear to your brain, helping the sound signals that your ears collect make contact with your brain cells. This wire, or tectorial membrane, has been neglected for decades, while medical experts are barely just beginning to understand why it's crucial when it comes to tinnitus and our hearing. This means that when you hear a sound, it's actually your brain interpreting the electrical signals carried by the nerve. So, in short, what they discovered is this. Sound vibrations enter your ear and hit your eardrum. These vibrations are quickly transformed into electrical signals, which get transported to your brain via a very delicate nerve-like wire. In other words, this whole system works like a small, old-fashioned telegraph inside your head. Once these electrical signals reach your brain, the brain interprets and decodes them into the whispers of your loved ones, your favorite music, TV sounds, car honks, footstep sounds, and so on. Basically, you hear what your brain hears, not what your ears hear. Now, this is the perfect scenario where every part of the system is perfectly healthy and works as it's supposed to. Your eardrum, the sound transporting wire, your brain, everything. But here's the incredible discovery which nobody has figured out so far. You can have perfectly good ears, but if this newly discovered wire is not functioning properly, it will mix up signals, causing ringing, buzzing, whooshing, or hissing. Imagine it like a